not wearing a costume because I'm too lazy and I don't have money. But also, I have work at 4:15 in the morning tomorrow, which also happens to be my birthday. So that's gonna be just a blast. So since it's Halloween, I thought, hell, I might as well talk about some horror movies I enjoy, and some good ones. Whenever I do talk about a horror movie on this channel so far, it's been pretty shitty. So I might as well just go into some more depth with some ones I enjoy. Now, there's the obvious picks like Halloween, The Shining, Psycho, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Thing. All of those are great movies, but I'm going to talk about some ones that don't get a lot of buzz. I mean, some may be familiar, some may have come out recently, but I thought, hey, it's a good excuse to talk about some good horror movies, so let's get on with it. First film I'm going to be talking about is a Brian De Palma film. Now, whenever people consider a Halloween Brian De Palma film, they think, oh, let's watch Carrie, or even Phantom of the Paradise has been getting a lot of, Halloween views since it's coming up on its 45th anniversary in a couple of years. But what I want to talk about is a Brian De Palma movie that doesn't get a lot of praise, or doesn't get a lot of people talking about it, and that is Sisters. This is a really fucked up movie. Basically, it's about a woman who witnesses a murder in the apartment that is across the way from her, and she's trying to investigate it. And as the plot goes on, a lot more stuff goes a little crazy. There's a subplot about conjoined twins. The movie has a really ambiguous and crazy ending that I don't want to spoil, but it's just a blast to watch. It's one of my personal favorite Brian De Palma films. This was made in 1972 or 1973, I can't remember the exact year. I think this was the one right before Phantom of the Paradise, which is what got him more attention, and then he made Carrie, which put him on the map. So, as far as Brian De Palma's films go, I would say it's one of his best. How does it work as a horror movie? It's really effective. This is top-notch 70s horror. It's not campy slasher horror like you would see in something like Halloween, per se, but it's really effective at just how uneasy it makes you feel the whole time. There's a character played by William Finley in this film, who was the lead in Phantom of the Paradise, and this is a completely different performance from him. He is so creepy, and he makes you so uncomfortable with his presence that you just hate him, but he's so good at being hateable that it just really works. I can't think of really any issues at the moment. I do remember thinking that the first 20 or so minutes took a little while to get going, but once the inciting incident happens, it really takes off. It's a crazy, crazy horror movie. Great Brian De Palma movie. Check it out. The next movie I'm going to be talking about is a little more recent, and that is The Witch, the first film by Robert Eggers. It was at the 2015 Sundance Film Festival. It didn't get a release until February of 2016. It was released by A24, which is my favorite my favorite distribution company, and they really released a masterpiece with this one. This is an amazing, amazing horror movie. Every single performance is almost flawless, even the child actors. Anya Taylor-Joy being the standout in the movie, I think she's incredible. The cinematography, while bleak and low on colors, people say that they don't like the color palette of this movie, but I think it really, really works. I mean, do we really want a bright and colorful movie about Salem witch trial period? Really? That would be a really bad stylistic choice. And I think that the muted colors, I know it kind of looks like raw footage from a camera, but it works to set the tone for the movie and how dark and really bleak that their lives are. And if you don't know what the plot is, this family who is living in a Puritan community in 17th century America is kicked out of their commune, and they are forced to go live in the woods, where there may or may not be a witch living. And this movie does not pull its punches. The imagery that is shown that's really violent is really fucking disturbing, and it's one of the most effective horror movies I think ever made. This is only Robert Eggers' first film, and he's already proven himself to be a master. Apparently he's supposed to be doing a Nosferatu remake, and while I would like to see his talents put into something a little more original, I cannot wait to see what he will do with this, this pre-existing story. And I have a feeling he will do a really great job with it. So if you haven't seen The Witch, you should watch it. It is more recent. A lot of people do kind of know about it, but I feel like it's kind of gotten swept under the radar since it got released in February last year. And you should watch it. The next film I'm going to talk about is a film by David Cronenberg. Now, it's not The Fly, it's not Scanners, it's not Videodrome. While those are all great movies, the one that I think really fits with the month of October is his 1988 film, Dead Ringers. And Dead Ringers is about twin gynecologists who have a really complicated relationship. And I don't want to exactly explain why it's a horror movie, but a lot of the imagery invoked in this movie is really disturbing. This is an early example of how to digitally impose the same person twice in a frame and make it look like they're twins. People usually would think, something like The Social Network did it the best, but this is a really early example of it, and it does it mostly well. What I will say is that some of the technology just does look a bit dated. There's a part where both Jeremy Irons' twins are on screen at the same time, and one is walking off screen, and he actually kind of crossfades off screen. If I can find the clip online, I'll try and show it, but it's really funny the way it looks. It's like you can see the effect starting to disappear as it goes off screen, and it's entertaining, and it's not like, it's like, okay, the technology was still really early, so I'll let it pass. This isn't one of David Cronenberg's best films, but I do think it's a really good one. I won't spoil anything about the plot because it's one that you have to see for yourself, and I would check it out this October, or, well, it's Halloween, so next October, I guess. All my life I'm looking for the magic. I'm going to be talking about two films now in the same category because they are both directed by Adam Wingard, who has been a little bit more recently controversial for his 2017 Death Note film, which it's a pretty shitty movie. I'm going to say that right now. And the way Adam Wingard was acting on social media is absolutely immature and unacceptable. But what I will say is that he does really have admirable roots in terms of filmmaking. His most popular, it's not his first film, it's his second film, but this is the one that got him noticed. You're Next. It aired, I think, at Toronto Film Fest in 2011, and it was just moving around festivals until mid-2013 when it finally got a theatrical release. And it's a really solid horror movie. It's not perfect. The first 30 minutes are pretty bad, but it has a purpose. It kind of takes your expectations and flips them. It's supposed to be like, making a comment on the genre, although what I think is if you're gonna do genre tropes, you should make them a little more cleverly done than just repeating them over, like what he does in this movie quite often. However, what I will say is that the last 30 minutes are so fucking awesome and entertaining and crazy that it makes up for the crappy first 30 minutes. Oh, this movie gets so violent and it's so fun. If you haven't seen it, I'd check it out. But what I will say is that his next film, which came out mid-2014, The Guest, is a lot better. This is much more a comment on kind of 80s style Carpenter-esque slasher movies, where Your Next was more a comment on modern horror films and stuff. And this one, it's basically a modern slasher movie, except Dan Stevens kills people with guns. So basically the plot is, there's a woman and her family who had a son that went to serve in the military, and I think Afghanistan, and he died in action. And this stranger who says that he served time with the family's son shows up at their doorstep just to say hello and hang out with them for a bit. And as he builds his relationship with this family, you start to learn a lot more about his past. And he's a pretty badass motherfucker. There's a great scene in a bar. There's a great scene in a Halloween horror style maze. This movie just really breathes and just, it's Halloween. It really makes you feel the spirit of Halloween, and it's really just a fun movie to watch around that time. I watched it earlier this month again for the third time, and it's a really great, fun, kind of throwback 80s style horror action movie. It's not perfect. Like I said about You're Next, it embraces some of the tropes a little too much, to the point where it's like, okay, I was taking this scene seriously, and now I'm not anymore. But it works for the most part, and I would very much recommend that you see this. It's a really fun movie. Next film I'm going to talk about is a movie I just watched a couple days ago for the first time, and oh my god, it's pretty fantastic. People give the movie Psycho a lot of credit for being the first official slasher movie ever created, or to become mainstream. However, that credit is not given to the proper creator. Psycho is a fantastic movie, but the real first slasher movie ever made was made in 1960, and it's the Michael Powell film Peeping Tom. Peeping Tom is about a man who kills people with his tripod for his camera. So that's pretty awesome. God, I don't even know where to start with this movie. Michael Powell, if you don't know, is the director of the 1948 film The Red Shoes, which I have not seen. Should have added that to my list of shame, but I will be seeing that now very soon because of how much I absolutely loved Peeping Tom. Every performance is so just, it's so British. It's so British the way it's made, and it's just, it makes it have this sort of slightly comedic undertone that you wouldn't really see in something like Psycho or Halloween or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But it works to where it makes you enjoy the movie more and take it a little bit more seriously when much creepier and more intense scenes are happening. The lighting and cinematography is absolutely fantastic. It's so dirty and sleazy for a movie that was made in 1960. And it works on pretty much every level. I would go as far as calling it a horror masterpiece. I'd check it out if you haven't already. It's amazing, and it's pretty underrated, if I do say so myself. God, that was not a proper sentence. It's pretty underrated, and you should watch it. Next film I'm going to be talking about is a movie that, while its poster and its delivery straight to Netflix on its initial release may trick you into thinking that it is a straight-to-DVD horror movie, trust me, it's not. This is a really great and effective underrated horror film. Last Shift. Last Shift is a movie about a woman who is working a graveyard shift in a police station when she starts getting random phone calls and starts seeing some really weird shit happening in the police station. And that's all I want to say, because for a movie that's so small budgeted and so... I feel bad for this movie not getting the amount of press that it did. It just went straight onto Netflix, and it's kind of been forgotten about since it came out, but it's a really well made and effective horror movie. For the budget it has, it's really effective, and it makes use of this very small location, and it just works. It's not perfect, it kind of has a dumb ending, and there's some unintentionally funny and cheesy moments in it, but overall I would say that it is really good and you should watch it. Especially around this time of year, because and especially at night, because it really gets under your skin. The next film I'm going to be talking about is a French horror film directed by Julia Ducournau, I think is how you pronounce her name. Came out in March of this year. It's called Raw. And I know it's a newer release, but it's probably not going to make my 2017 list, so I thought I might as well talk about it right now. Raw is a film about a young girl who is going to vet school, and through this really fucked up hazing ritual, she starts to have some more carnivorous urges. And she starts out as a vegetarian, and she is anything but by the end of this movie. You could say that it has undertones of pushing a vegan or vegetarian lifestyle, but it just kind of revels in the grossness and violence that it has. That it's just so fun and enjoyable. Most of the acting is pretty good. There's some bad performances. You know, it's hard to get great Oscar-worthy performances out of a small horror movie like this, but for the most part, it's really effective. The gore is a lot of fun, and there's some weird symbolic imagery that I don't fully understand yet. I think it would make more sense on a second watch, but other than that, it's a really effective, creepy horror movie with a really big mindfuck of an ending. So, I would recommend it. The next film I'm going to be talking about is a movie I just watched for the first time recently, and I'm surprised at how much I really thoroughly enjoyed it. It is called Repulsion. It is a 1965 film directed by Roman Polanski, who is most famous for Rosemary's Baby, Chinatown, The Pianist. I think Rosemary's Baby is Polanski's best work, but this comes at a very close second. Repulsion is so effective in how disturbing and creepy it is. It's about a woman played by Catherine Deneuve who is staying by herself in her apartment, and she has these really disturbing hallucinations and visions, and the sense of paranoia that this movie instills in you is so good. And notice a lot of the movies I'm talking about don't use a lot of over-the-top scares or, you know, boo scares that you see in a lot of modern horror films. It uses genuine tension and disturbing imagery to actually affect you and leave a lasting impact on you. Repulsion is a movie that deserves to be watched in perfect conditions. All the lights off, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, by yourself. That is the way to watch this movie. It is so creepy and effective, and you will not be able to sleep after it. I would highly recommend it. So, once again, I'm going to be talking about a pairing of two movies. Back in 2007, the Grindhouse double feature hit theaters. And this was not just two films, but a set of sort of fake Grindhousey trailers. And the only way to watch this is to get the full experience. Get the Grindhouse Blu-ray, watch the movies in the order they were released in theaters, and watch every single trailer on the Blu-ray. I unfortunately don't have the Blu-ray, but all the trailers are available on YouTube. The two main films in this Grindhouse double feature are Death Proof, directed by Quentin Tarantino, and Planet Terror, directed by Robert Rodriguez. And while I can say I enjoy Death Proof more of the two, I really enjoy Planet Terror as well. Death Proof is starring Kurt Russell. It's about a man who kills women with his 1970s Dodge Charger. And it's really bloody, and it's really violent, and it's a ton of fucking fun. Quentin Tarantino knows how to write pitch-perfect dialogue. I haven't talked about him a lot on this channel, but he is my favorite director and writer of all time. And this is one of my favorites of his. And then Planet Terror is about a woman who, or a stripper who has to fight off zombies during this kind of crazy apocalypse that happens. And it's just a bunch of blood and gore, and at one point she loses her leg and has to attach a machine gun to it, and it's so over the top, it's so bloody, and it's just so much fun. If you haven't seen this Grindhouse double feature, I would so highly recommend it. It's just a blast. Perfect time of year to watch it is Halloween, or any time of the year. This is just a great movie. There are great movies all around, and you should watch them. The next film I'm going to be talking about had a really limited release when it came out in, I think, April of 2016, and this is The Invitation. This is a much smaller budgeted film from a director named Karen Karsuma, who I was surprised to find out has directed some pretty schlocky, big budget action horror films like Aeon Flux and Jennifer's Body. But The Invitation is much smaller scale, and much more effective than either of those. It's about a man and his girlfriend who go over to this kind of dinner party with a bunch of friends and family from their past. And the night devolves into madness, and it's just a blast to watch. It's really tense, it's really atmospheric, you really understand why the main character feels the way he does, and you can sympathize with him the whole time, and you can sympathize with his girlfriend who has no fucking clue what's going on most of the time, because if you were coming into this party full of people you don't know, you'd be just a little bit on edge too. And it's just so creepy and effective. And the horror part of it doesn't really happen until the last 30 minutes of it. But when it does, it's really effective. And if you haven't seen it, check it out. I'm pretty sure it's still on Netflix. But if it's not, you can find it on most VOD services. Next is The Void, which I could have seen in theaters, but I didn't because I didn't have money at the time. And finals were happening, so I thought, I can't really, spend more time at the movies than I already do. So, The Void is a 1980s sort of body horror throwback about this cop and a woman who works at the hospital that's the center location of this movie, and they're hiding from this weird cult that is just surrounding the building, and also there's a giant squid monster that is attacking people. This movie uses practical effects in a time when CGI jump scares are prevalent. And for the most part, the practical effects work very well. It's not particularly scary, it's just more gross than it is scary. But the last 30 minutes gets so bizarre that it just kind of makes up for what was a pretty underwhelming first act and an okay second act. The third act is great. Most of the movie works pretty well in terms of filmmaking. The cinematography is good. The acting is decent for a small budget horror movie like this. But the ending is so nuts that it just makes up for all the problems that I had with it before. Not a perfect movie, but it's a really fun one, and I would watch it around this time of year. Green Room. Oh man, I love Green Room. Green Room is a film by the director named Jeremy Saltier. He directed Blue Ruin and Murder Party, neither of which I have seen, but I would like to. And Green Room is about a punk band who accidentally get a gig at a bar full of neo-Nazis. One of which is played by Patrick Stewart. Oh man, this movie's awesome. Once again, really bloody, really violent. It deals with a lot of modern horror tropes, and it kind of turns them on their heads. Anton Yelchin is sort of the lead character in the movie, and he does a really good job. Imogen Poots is really good in the film as well, but of course Patrick Stewart is the standout. And this movie gets a really good performance out of Macon Blair, who should be in more movies. Check this one out if you haven't. It came out April last year, kind of flew under the radar, but it did end up on a lot of people's best of 2016 lists, including mine. And it's a really just fun movie that you should check out. The next and final movie I'm talking about is a 1977 giallo horror film directed by Dario Argento. That is called Suspiria. Now, most horror fans know about Suspiria and appreciate Suspiria for what it did, but for those who are more average film viewers and don't really know about a lot of horror films from the 1970s and before, Suspiria is about a ballet dancer who goes to an academy where some pretty weird stuff is happening. And that's always kind of the log line of the horror movies. It's like, you don't want to spoil anything because just everything that happens in each of these movies is just so crazy and bizarre that spoiling it would do the viewer a disservice. And the standout aspect of Suspiria that really works for me is its cinematography and its lighting. This movie uses so many gorgeous and beautiful colors. It's like you're looking at a one of those stained glass paintings in a church. It's incredible, and I'm in awe of it every time I see a still from it. I've only seen the film once, and that is unfortunate because I love this movie. And once again, a modern trend of a lot of the movies I've been talking about on this list. The last 30 minutes get crazy, and it's crazy to the point where you don't really know what's going on, but you don't care because you're having such a blast watching it. It's a great movie. It's a heavy inspiration for films like The Neon Demon and The Love Witch. It's so amazingly done, and I would definitely watch it. So yeah, those are some horror movies I recommend. Some ones I didn't talk about: The Neon Demon, The Love Witch, It Comes at Night, It Follows. Those are movies that more people know about. But I hope you have a happy Halloween, and I hope you enjoy yourself.
Spooky, scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom tonight.